Back, everybody. So we're now moving on to the second part of our afternoon of speed. So we're moving on to the topic of procurement, which I suspect, as ever, is going to be a topic that's of great interest to suppliers. So we're going to hear about how speed is going to speed up and simplify and make more efficient the procurement process. So I'm pleased to welcome Cameron Burns, Commercial Director of Southern Region at Network Rail, and Jimmy Ogunfuwa, Head of Commercial Strategy at the Department for Transport. So you'll hear both from client and government on their view of what speed is going to do for procurement. As before, don't forget, if you've got any questions, then please pop them in the Q&A dialogue, and we'll pick those up with Cameron and Jimmy at the end of their presentation. So I think, Cameron, you're going to share your slides, so if I can invite you to do so. And over to you, Cameron, and thank you very much.
Thank you, David, and please tell me if you can't hear me. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you about what we're doing in this arena. This is going to be a tale of two halves between myself and Jimmy. I'm going to speak to you about the procurement thematic review that I've been leading within Network Rail, and then Jimmy is going to come and talk about the Construction Playbook, which is the backbone for a number of the initiatives that I've been addressing in Project Speed. So let's start with the problem. A common problem that everyone voices in procurement: it takes too long, it's always on the critical path, and it stifles innovation. That was the challenge that's been put to us. How do we improve those fronts and drive forward and deliver efficiencies in not only program but cost? After consultation with stakeholders within Network Rail, both delivery and commercial, and the wider delivery partners, we have come up with 9 work streams which have been consolidating to what has been coined the Magnificent 7 themes. The first one is around myth busting, determining what we can and can't do. The second one is around procurement agility. Third is legislation, process, procedure. Fourth one, innovation. Fifth one is around time. Sixth is around benchmarking, and the 7th is around early contractor involvement. And what I'm going to do today is just run through each of those, look at what we're doing and what we're trying to develop as outputs and the benefits we're hoping those will realise. So in the myth-busting fact and fiction work stream, we often hear the comments: we can't do this. We'd like to be able to do that. What can we do? You're in the way. Quite often we find that those are as a result of misconceptions, misunderstandings, and often come off the back of uninformed decisions making. What you'd expect me to do is encourage people to talk to procurement professionals at an early stage. We are blessed with a team of very competent procurement professionals who are very adept and skillful at navigating through the limited restrictions we have on procurement within the utilities regs and Network Rail. So we're looking to debunk some of those myths and actually produce a bit of an FAQ guide which would help our delivery teams understand what is the art of the possible, and what we can do to accelerate programs and reduce the headaches and the pain of delivering professional procurement to help their programs move forward. The second work stream is around procurement agility. In most instances, procurement is seen as a bit of a blocker and wants people to just want us to get out of the way so that they can get on and doing the sexy stuff, delivering projects. Procurement, unfortunately, is a necessary evil within that process to allow us to secure our competent contractors to deliver what we want when they want it, be that supply, goods or works. Part of what we can do to improve that process is to provide efficient and agile route to the market, so that we don't tie ourselves up in long processes or pre-qualifying suppliers where we've done that already. So the output this one is looking at is providing visibility of all the frameworks that we have, not only in Network Rail but outside, that we can use to take advantage to deliver enhancement projects. Not all of them will deliver through frameworks, but where it is imperative and where programs and scope align, then they are an efficient and effective way of accessing the supply market and our delivery partners. So what we're looking to do is to pave the way for quick and efficient access to our delivery partners to accelerate those programs. Third on the work stream list is around legislation. It's one of the big misconceptions that we have around procurement, is that legislation stifles everything, and that actually it prevents fast procurement. The review we undertook determined that actually the utilities regs, which we procure under as an arm's length body of the government, actually mandates a maximum of 45 days across our procurement process. And given that a lot of our enhancement procurements take months, 45 days really isn't seen as a huge impact there. But saying that, we have had a look at the utilities regs, and we're going through that at the moment to understand where we can make improvements. We are still working through that. We've identified a couple where we think there's some legitimate improvements can be made, which will increase the flexibility and allow us to procure more effectively. And clearly, this also supports the Transforming Public Procurement Green Paper review that Lord Agnew is leading at the moment, and we are feeding our recommendations into that process so that we can hopefully see an enhanced and improved set of regulations going forward. Next on the list is innovation. Often an arguing point in procurement as to whether procurement does stifle innovation. What we're looking at is how we can enhance innovation through the procurement process. Two separate work streams here. One is around the promotion of outcome specifications, so removing the very prescriptive dictatorial approach to what we want, and empowering the supply chain to come up with the solutions that buy into innovation and stretch the boundaries of what we would normally see on our railway. And so we are looking at developing some guidance on how best to use outcome specifications. And the other one is around standards challenge. Network rail standards are sometimes seen as a reason for driving at costs and delaying things. So we are looking at how we can bring standards challenge into the bidding process. There's a double-edged sword here. Quite often, to challenge standards takes time, and so might add time into a procurement process. But if it can deliver innovative bids that save us money, then that's a win as far as I'm concerned. Again, this lines nicely to the Construction Playbook policy that does talk about moving to an outcome-based approach to procurement. Next, we talk about time. Time is one of the things we're trying to improve on in this work stream in speed. Why do activities take so long, and why do they always seem to sit on the critical path? There are a number of opportunities we have here. Frameworks is one that allows us to sometimes take procurement off the critical path and run it in parallel with ongoing programs. But also we find that a lot of the time is taken up with, again, misunderstandings as to who's responsible for what, when and where, how long things should take. So we are producing a RACI that would allow participants in the procurement process to understand exactly what they are responsible for, accountable for throughout that process, which will hopefully remove some of the ambiguity there. We're looking to set a set of procurement norms that will set out what we think how long we think procurement should take, and then we're looking to use KPIs to measure performance against those norms. Using the old adage, if it's measured, it gets done. We're hoping this will drive some improvement in our procurement processes. And finally, we're looking to develop some training programs to help accelerate procurement programs. Quite often, our procurement is done in parallel with other business as usual activities, whereas we expect our supply chain and delivery partners to jump through hoops and deliver tenders in breakneck speed. So we're looking to adopt some of those techniques that you are all very familiar with to accelerate how we procure things where it's necessary, to reduce the time it takes, and ideally take it off the critical path. Penultimate work stream is around benchmarking. Clearly, as a public sector body, we have value for money at the heart of what we do and looking to deliver best value to UK PLC. In all of the procurement, we endeavour to get best value where it's in competitive tender. At least we can demonstrate that we have market value, if not value for money, but we will generally procure using a most economically advantageous approach. And so we're not just chasing a bottom line, we are looking for value, and the value is defined by the criteria we evaluate against. To do that effectively, we need good benchmark data that allows us to understand what things should cost and when we are getting value for money. And so we're looking at how we improve capturing an analysis of the cost data that we have to ensure that we have good quality benchmark data. So when we are procuring things, when we are negotiating things, we are still ensuring that we're getting value for money from for the paying public. Again, this one aligns nicely with the Construction Playbook, benchmarking initial cost models. Finally, we're looking at early contractor involvement and how we can bring our delivery partners into the whole project delivery cycle at an appropriate time. I think Network Rail in the enhancements world is very good at engaging with the supply chain early in a number of areas. Quite often, though, we're bringing them in too early, and that drives up costs and possibly it delivers low value. Other times, we're bringing them in too late and miss that opportunity altogether. So what we're looking at is how do we balance that and get an effective use of early contractor involvement, early supply chain involvement, early delivery partner involvement, call it what you want, to ensure that actually we maximise the benefits that work stream can deliver in our projects going forward. And again, that one is also nicely aligned to the Construction Playbook policy on early supply chain involvement. And I think that is me. So at that point, I will hand over to Jimmy, who's going to talk to us about the Construction Playbook.
Hello all. I hope you can see me and hear me. So I'm Jimmy Ogunfuwa, and I'm the head of commercial strategy and policy at the Department for Transport. I'll be talking to you today about the Construction Playbook. Thank you very much, Cameron, for making reference to the Construction Playbook, because it's at the apex of what we're doing in DFT, and it's something we're embracing very much in the DFT. So, so what is the Construction Playbook? The Construction Playbook is an initiative from Cabinet Office, from central government, and it captures commercial best practice and specific sector reform on how contracting authorities, and that's departments like the Department for Transport, and the construction sector suppliers, including the supply chain, should engage with each other. It builds on the sourcing playbook, which was launched in 2019. And then version 2 of the sourcing playbook was launched in June 2020. And then we've got the very latest iteration of the sourcing playbook in May 2021. You may ask, what is the sourcing playbook? How is it different from the construction playbook? The sourcing playbook is all about getting it right, and it applies to other sectors with the exception of construction, and it's all about getting it right. I mean, recent examples have shown that we in government have not got certain project decisions right, whether it be attempting to contract for the delivery of services without the necessary expertise, or expecting too much from the private sector provider, forgetting that we always remain responsible for the delivery of public services. So what the construction playbook aims to do is basically provide a framework through which suppliers like yourself and contracting authorities like the DFT can improve construction going forward. And it actually works and builds into the current government initiative around building back better. The construction playbook is a result of extensive collaboration from across the public and private sector, and lots of consultations were done before it was officially launched on the 8th of December 2020. So within the construction playbook, there is a compact with industry. So there has been lots of consultation, like I said, and the Construction Leadership Council has actually signed up and endorses the construction playbook. And the aim is the true embedding and implementation of the construction playbook. We get things right, we're much more efficient, we improve performance, profitability of our suppliers also, and sustainability of the sector. So the construction playbook itself has 14 key principles within them, and government departments are expected to abide by them or explain why they cannot. And I'm just going to go through some of them quickly here. So one of them is standardized designs, components, and interfaces. In other words, modern methods of construction. And you will all agree with me that when you have tailor-made components, it only drives up the price. Hence the reason why standardization works better. The use of benchmarking and should cost model. And I was very glad that Cameron made reference to should cost model in his presentation. Guidance on risk allocation. At the end of the day, we carry the risk. And I think in certain respect, we've tried to sort of move the risk to the suppliers, which ultimately will not really be sustainable. And the last one, the market and health capability assessment. Let's talk to the market. Let's know what they're thinking, and let's put that into our thinking when we develop our requirements. So what the market and health capability assessment is doing is actually, just like Cameron said in his presentation, early supplier involvement, early contractor involvement, and that's very key. So some of you might have heard about the government transparency agenda, which is all about making procurements, commercial arrangements much more transparent. And I wanted to just highlight two aspects which I think are key to what you do for us. One is pipeline. So there is a mandate now that we will publish our pipelines not less than 18 months. And this is to give you certainty so that you know what projects are coming on. And it also allows you to plan better. The other one is KPI reporting. Also in the spirit of transparency, we want to publish 3 KPIs from the most important contracts. Just in case you're asking, confidential information, commercial information, obviously that will be the exception. So it's not the rule that will publish things that are sensitive, but where we can, we want to publish 3 KPIs, because at the end of the day, these are government contracts and they're there for the public. So I just wanted to touch on some of the stuff that the Construction Playbook will help in delivering for the transparency agenda. This is a very busy slide. There's 2 slides like this, so I won't go into a lot of detail. But what I'm trying to portray here is just how integrated the 14 policies in the Construction Playbook are. So at the very start of a project life cycle, at the very start of a procurement, there's always business justification. We do a lot of preparatory and planning work. And what the bottom half of this slide, 1 to 6, is showing are some of the key policies in the playbook and how they actually work when we're looking at starting procurements. So some of them there, I've already spoken about pipelines, longer term contracting. That's something the Construction Playbook is definitely in favor of, because when we're talking about construction, we're talking about building bridges, building railway, building long-term infrastructure. And what we don't want is short-term contracts where it's difficult for you to actually get a return on investment. So Cameron spoke about the outcome-based approach, which we're also doing. So all this is showing you is just how within the life cycle of a project, how some of the key principles in the Construction Playbook works. So here also at the bottom, 7, 8, 9, I've already spoken about risk allocation. That is now a key principle within the Construction Playbook, assessing economic, financial standing, and resolution planning. And what resolution planning is saying there is let's, within the contract, work on contingencies just in case something doesn't go right. Let's insert that in the contract so that if it happens, we're in a good place to take that forward. So in terms of the DFT specifically, transport is the largest customer for UK construction, and we're delivering this through 3 big ALBs, Highways England, HS2, and Network Rail. The DFT share of construction spend in the short term, especially with COVID, is bound to increase. We're committed to delivering better, faster, and greener solutions. And through our commercial strategies, such as the network rate project speed, which Cameron is articulated very well, we will work to continuously improve productivity and mainstream environmental mitigation. So how are we implementing the Construction Playbook in DFT? And it'll be interesting to get your take on how you in your organization are looking to implement the Construction Playbook. Our approach is over 3 years, but we do three simple things, and we're going out to our ALBs and our executive agencies on this basis. 1, a gap analysis. Where are our ALBs at the moment in terms of implementing those 14 key policies? Once we've established that, then the second one is training. Is there a gap? And if there's a gap, let's do e-learning because of COVID, but also let's do physical training if we can. Let's do knowledge drops and on-the-shoulder support there. What that means is, whilst a live project is ongoing, via the expertise of the Cabinet Office, we will actually embed experts within the project that will help drive it forward. And then the last one there is review points and compliance. And what we're saying here is, once we've done the gap analysis, once we've done the training, let's go back in the near future to see if the 14 key policies are well embedded and is actually led to better performance, profitability for our suppliers, and sustainability of the sector. So that's the end of my slide. I hope you've got questions for us. I'll hand back to David to take it from here. Thank you.
Jimmy, thank you very much. Do you want to unshare your screen? And then you'll be ready when I ask you the questions. For the benefit of the audience, you can only see one speaker at a time on this particular system. Jimmy, are you able to put your camera on, please?
Yes, I am.
Excellent, great. Okay, thank you very much. So if I kick off the first question while we're waiting for the audience to get warmed up. You mentioned that you're implementing the playbook over about 3 years. I think it came out last year. Are you 1/3 of the way through that, or is it front end loaded? How quickly do you hope to see the benefits? I mean, actually, I can ask Jimmy, and Cameron's referred to it. So, Cameron, how far through embedding into your projects are you with the playbook? You mentioned your plans, but how is it going in actuality? So, Jimmy, if you want to pick that one up first, that would be brilliant. Yeah,
not a problem. So actually, it's going very well. And again, I just make reference to the 14 policies, principles in the construction playbook. And like I said, we've been doing gap analysis, and actually ALBs and executive agencies are in a good place. For instance, just as an example, the very first principle in the playbook is publication of pipelines, and all our ALBs are doing this at the moment, and it's widely available. So it's a 3-year process, but we're in a very good place at the moment, and we're actually seeing commercial benefits as a result of this.
And that applies to across the whole portfolio of DFT projects.
Absolutely, absolutely. So HS2, we're talking about the Birmingham station being built, the A120 motorway that Highways Agency are working on. All these projects have the principles of the playbook built into it. So we're not just waiting till the end of 3 years to actually start implementing them. We are implementing them as we speak. And just to add, I sit in the center of DFT, and I'm a member of the Commercial Assurance Board. So I get to see the big projects as they come to DFT. And I've got to say, the projects we're seeing have the principles and the ethos of the construction playbook going forward.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Jimmy. So if I turn to Cameron now, Cameron, what you're obviously planning to, certainly you mentioned the construction playbook on a number of occasions, and from a supplier perspective, we're very supportive of that. pipelines, ECI. Also, I think one of the things in there that we're interested in is the talk of longer term, more mature supply chain relationships, building the flip side of the health, monitoring the health of the supply chain is trying to have longer term relationships to support the health of the supply chain. So I'm interested in Cameron, in how you're progressing from a Network Rail perspective.
As Jimmy said, we've been supporting DFT in a gap analysis to understand where we are doing well, where we need to work better. Yeah, our current view is that actually we're in a good place as Network Rail with regard to compliance with the Construction Playbook. Some areas of the playbook we need to do some more work on. Adoption of digital and things like that are areas that we probably are behind where we would like to be with regard to embracing the digital future of the brave new world. Other areas, as Jimmy said, the commercial pipeline we've been publishing for a number of years now. It's still not as good as we'd like it to be, and we need to get better at that. But that's a work in progress. Some of the others around market health and capabilities, particularly off the back of the Carillion demise, we made great strides in having a better understanding of our supply market in that area. Other areas, early supply chain involvement, early contractor involvement, early delivery partner involvement. I believe we're quite good at that. We need to hone that and actually make that more efficient and effective. So I think generally we're in a good position as Network Rail. Clearly there's more to be done, and we'll be working closely with the DFT to ensure that we not only as I say, plagiarise with pride from anyone else who's got good ideas out there, but share our best practice with our colleagues in wider industry as we move forward.
Thank you, Cameron. There's a question here which is, I think, very relevant, and it might be one for both of you to pick up. If I come to Jimmy first of all, does this embed other procurement initiatives such as Project 13 and the 6 pillars of the OGC procurement model? So, you know, there's lots of good practice out there, and certainly we see in Network Rail increasingly adopting Project 13. I think there's at least several trials going on there. So, Jimmy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, a very good question actually, and I'm pleased to say that it actually embeds all the principles and practices within Project 13 and the OGC principles also, because at the end of the day, suppliers, ourselves, ALB, it's about getting it right. It's about being more efficient. It's about supporting our suppliers. So all what is in the Construction Playbook actually supplements all of that. And I think the other thing I would like to add, and it's for the audience, especially the suppliers, there are details of the Construction Playbook, including workshops happening. And I hope they're all accessing this, because we want to work hand in hand with our suppliers. And in fact, together we can make this work. So it's it's key to the success of the Construction Playbook that suppliers are working with us. And I hope they have access to materials. If they don't, please let me know.
Okay, thank you. That's a good offer. Thank you, Jimmy. Cameron, is there anything you'd like to add to that question around the embedding of Project 13 and the OGC framework?
So, as you said, David, Network Rail have started on its journey to embracing a number of those. Project 13. We have some trials running at the moment in Scotland looking at that. In my area, Southern, our CP7 procurement strategy, it has Project 13 at the heart of it. And so we see great benefits from adopting a Project 13 approach, which I would say is just an extension of the journey we've been on for probably the last 2 control periods anyway. But there's still bits that we can learn and drive forward to increase that collaborative approach and that enterprise approach that Project 13 offers. With regard to the OGC 6 pillars, it's something that we use occasionally. I've used it when we started looking at our Croydon area remodelling programme. That was at the heart of the upfront analysis we did on how we would look to deliver that. And if our friends at Treasury ever come up with a few pounds, we'd like to reintroduce that and get that project back up and running.
Excellent. There's a question here which illustrates that this is quite a complicated landscape. So the question here is, how do SMEs see what is in the pipeline in the Construction Playbook? Well, the Construction Playbook sets out the principle there should be pipelines, but they're published in other places. And it just illustrates how it can be quite difficult for a new supplier to market to find their way around. If whoever that is would like to drop us an email later on, we can point you in the direction of there's information on the RIA website. There's the pipelines published on the Network Rail the Network Rail pipelines published on the Network Rail website. There's a lot of pipeline information available out there. And as Cameron said, increasingly getting better. But I don't know, Jimmy or Cameron, was there anything you'd like to add to that? Jimmy,
yeah.
First.
Yeah, very good question. And this is the area we're very keen to address, and that's the SME area. In terms of the pipeline, I will refer you to gov.uk. The government central website, and if you type in pipelines there, it will come up with the various pipelines. This is something that at the very height of government, it's been taken very, very serious, and we're having to report regularly to Cabinet Office to actually show our pipelines are out there. So 1, look on gov.uk. 2, look at the individual ALB's website, Network Rail, HS2, they're all there. And that will give you more comfort, because how could you plan if you don't know what we're doing? So we're very, very keen to share that with you. Thanks,
Jimmy. There's another question on a slightly different tack here. It's talking about modern methods of construction, adopting the BIM framework, which BIM gets a mention, the importance of BIM and digital gets a mention in the Construction Playbook. There needs to be a common framework of standards and protocols that will enable the benefit of that be shared across organisations and sectors. So the punchline question really is, how mature do you think we are as an industry and Network Rail specifically to implement this approach in reality? What can we do as an industry, DFT, Network Rail, delivery partners, somebody should do that terminology is getting traction, to make BIM and real digitalisation of rail construction a reality? So Cameron, if I can come to you first.
As I said, it's an area we need to improve on. We are working in that direction. We have people looking at how we best adopt BIM and get some standardization around that. I'll be honest, I'm not the best person to answer that one directly. It's not an area of expertise for me. But if the person who has raised the question wants to contact me directly, or David, if you want to take that, I can provide a fuller answer as to where we are in that process quite happily.
Okay, that's fair enough, Ben. Fair enough, Cameron. We'll come back to you on that one. Jimmy, you'd like to add something to that? Please go ahead.
Yeah, another excellent question, I must say. In terms of digital, actually, it's the third major principle in the Construction Playbook. in terms of design digitalization, MMC, modern methods of construction. So we in DFT, it's something we're taking very, very serious. And we've got a project called TIES that is actually taking this forward. And we're working hand in hand with Network Rail and the rest of our ALBs to make sure that digitalization is actually paramount in what we do. Because again, just like I said, it's about efficiency, it's about getting it right. And digitalization will help that. So we are on a journey, and we're working with our partners to make sure digitalization works very well for us. And you.
Thanks, Jimmy. I don't know if it's the same anonymous who's posted this next point, which is obviously somebody's done what you suggested and Googled the DFT pipeline, and they say it's March 2016, which I'm hoping is, you know, just something that's in the archive in the internet rather than the latest version. So I think one of the follow-up actions after the meeting is we'll circulate to the participants the various sources of pipeline information. It's also just worth mentioning that, and I'm not sure how many have signed up to it now, but we've got north of 150 organisations signed up to the Rail Supply Group pipeline charter. And what that's all about is the pipelines I think we've probably been tending to talk about are the client pipelines. And in the pipeline charter, it also picks up the pipelines of tier ones, for example, because a lot of the work for SMEs is work that flows down through the tier one, tier two, tier three supply chain. And so the pipeline charter is all about making those tier one pipelines visible as well as the client pipelines. So we'll share that information to the audience when we send out the material after the event. Cameron, I think you wanted to come back in there, so over to you.
No, thank you, David. Just to say that Network Rail does also have a pipeline published on networkrail.co.uk, and as I say, we're getting better, but I know from the Southern region, we publish a lot of the supply chain requirements from our key framework suppliers. And so last time I looked, I think there was a significant number of entries in there that hopefully will help inform the SME community as to where they can play a part in our successful delivery going forward.
Thanks, Cameron. So if I can just ask, I've got there's some more detailed sort of domain questions, if you like, rail industry questions coming in. But if I can just go back to a more strategic point for a minute, you both referenced the green paper on government procurement, which was out to consultation not so long ago. I'm not clear what the process is for turning that into final conclusions, potentially a white paper, and then embedding it in government policy. So I just wondered, Jimmy, if you're able to shed any light on how quickly that will mature, because there was a lot to like in what was suggested there. I think the only concern we had was the suggestion that frameworks should be limited to 4 years, which we were quite concerned about, given that the rail industry works in 5-year cycles, and actually there's a lot of wisdom that suggests that pipelines, that frameworks should be longer even than 5 years to manage the transition from, so we see, for example, in the track renewals world and other places that they're longer than 5 years. So that was probably our main concern. I'm just wondering if you're able to share, Jimmy, anything about when that might mature into government policy, and whether you've anything to say about the pipeline point. Okay. Sorry, the framework point.
Yeah, thank you for that, David. So the first one about the green paper. What we're currently going through at the moment is what I would call an avalanche of responses from suppliers, from the public. Clearly, people are passionate about this, and they've shared loads of feedback with us. So that is what we're currently going through now, and the aim is that hopefully by the end of this year, we'll be in a position to go to the next phase, which is a white paper or another document that will come out. In terms of the framework, I'm glad to say actually that one of the things the green paper looked at is frameworks, and what is being proposed going forward is open frameworks. So rather than have a framework that's just for 4 years with certain suppliers locked in, going forward, we'll have a framework that is open, and it will allow suppliers, new suppliers, to come in at specific points. And the reason behind that is that innovation is constant. It's evolving all the time. And if we lock frameworks like we've historically done, you don't get the benefits of new things coming into the market. Also, it brings in new suppliers. The other thing about the length of frameworks, we're actually looking at 7-year, 8-year frameworks going forward. Because like I said at the beginning, construction is a long-term piece of work. You only have to look at HS2 projects. What's the point in having a 4-year framework that doesn't give the suppliers return on investments? So yes, we're looking at the length of the framework, and we're also looking at the mechanism of the framework in terms of how do we get new agile innovations in, and that's by leaving it open and allowing suppliers to come in at various points.
Okay, that's a really interesting new development. We'll watch that with great interest, and clearly we're pleased to hear that the suggestion is that framework should be longer rather than shorter. So that's good. That neatly brings us to a question which Cameron might want to pick up, which is the question: are framework contracts still the preferred procurement strategy for CP7? I think you alluded to using, to using the frameworks as a tool for agility and getting to the market quickly.
Simply, yes, frameworks will always play a part in our procurement strategy. We will place frameworks as and when we feel that they deliver a benefit from an agility, from a cost saving point of view. However, how they play out in the wider procurement strategy will be down to individual regions and our national teams to look at from a problem point of view. As I say, we're looking at a Project 13 type sort of enterprise, and whilst we're still working through that detail, I can see frameworks being a feature part of the ecosystem as we've described it within that enterprise that will help us deliver. But it will be a combination. It will be on a horses for courses basis.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Cameron. If I can stay with you for a second, Cameron. There's a question here about the Magnificent Seven. Jimmy clarified that he's looking to introduce the playbook in DFT over a 3-year period. What's the time frame for bringing in your 7 initiatives under the Magnificent Seven?
This year would be the aspiration. We are. I'm supported ably by colleagues from all over the country. So each of our regional suppliers, regional teams are supporting us on the various initiatives, and they are frantically beavering away with their business as usual activities, as well as this Project 13 initiative to try and deliver these efficiencies and these improvements as quickly as possible. We are targeting getting everything up and running this year, calendar year, if we can. And at the moment, I'm not seeing any reason why that shouldn't be the case.
Good. That's really good to hear. And clearly that fit, that speed being speedy, which is good. The question here about, you mentioned ECI quite a lot, which is clearly something that we believe in. We think it's important to get the supply chain or delivery partners involved early to bring their expertise in. But there's almost as many different definitions of what ECI is as projects using ECI. So the question here is, there's been some nervousness in Network Rail around single sourcing ECI, as that potentially could be perceived as giving an unfair advantage or some commitment to a particular contractor. So what are your thoughts on how to overcome that specific hurdle? Getting the right expertise in, but without either precluding that outfit from bidding or giving any perception of a particular advantage. And just sort of building on that, do you have and we'll open up to Jimmy after that, what does good look like from your perspective in a good ECI arrangement?
So tackling the first bit around direct award, it happens if we competitively tendered the early contractor involvement. So to me, it's not a single tender action direct award issue. It's how do we maintain a level playing field so that when we subsequently procure further things, we do that in a fair, transparent, and open manner. And we are, I believe, quite adept at that. We will generally share with the tenderers the details and the data that we have either shared with the ECI supplier or the outputs they provided to us, so that in subsequent procurement there is as close to a level playing field as we can get. Most people will appreciate that ECI can often be a double-edged sword. In fact, you can often know too much and then price all the risks that you've stumbled across that others might not. And so there is a double edge. But we do work very hard to ensure that we maintain that level playing field and don't provide an unfair advantage to suppliers we bring in early. What does good ECI look like? Okay, how long is a piece of string? Depending on the circumstance, depending on what we need, what we clear. The part of the reason for bringing ECI, the supply chain in early, the delivery partners in early, is to drive that initiative, to drive that thinking, to challenge what we're doing, and ensure that actually when we come to the really expensive part of construction, the implementation, we've done all the hard thinking and we've got the most effective, efficient, and practical solution to the problem we presented to start with. So it's a very difficult one to actually put into words, which is partly why we have this work stream to look at how do we most effectively use ECI at the right times for each of the circumstances where we find that it's beneficial.
Thank you, Cameron. Jimmy, over to you.
Yeah, ECI or ESI, early supplier involvement, it's absolutely key. And in the Construction Playbook, it's actually the 4th chapter that speaks about early contractor involvement. And I always use the example that in a typical construction, you've got the clients, you've got the consultants, you've got the designers, you've got the contractor. If we don't do ECI or EC, or if we don't involve them early enough, you end up with a blame game where this designer designs it, hands it over to the contractor say, and there's all kinds of issues. So early supplier involvement is absolutely key, and this is recognized in the construction playbook. The other thing I wanted to add quickly is around the pipeline, because someone mentioned the one on there was the March one. We actually, because I've gone back to my office while we were talking, just to clarify, and we'll publish them on a quarterly basis. So the next one is due any minute now, hence the reason why what you've got there is the March version.
I think it was worse than that. If they've got it right, what it says was March 2016. It must be some old data sat on the internet somewhere, which is always a problem once you publish something. So there's a question here, which I think is a really interesting and very valid one. It says, has there been any research done on whether frameworks represent value for money compared to competitive tender? So in Jimmy, in the work that's been done around the Green Book, you're focusing on long-term relationships and frameworks and so forth. What was the research done, or I think there's the risk of leading the witness. I think my understanding is there's something about complexity, isn't there? There's a complexity dimension here, and there's times where competitive tender is absolutely the right answer.
Yeah, I mean, just to say that a framework doesn't necessarily mean that that there's no other. We're not doing competition. So you have a framework, and then you have call of contracts within it. So once you have a framework in place, if the new procurement's coming on, we then do a call of competition between the framework providers to ensure there's value for money. So it's an evolving piece. It doesn't mean because they're all in the framework, we don't look at a value for money anymore. And like I said, the Green Paper is looking at having in place open frameworks rather than closed frameworks, so that going forward, new innovations can make its way into the framework rather than it being closed off.
Thank you. Hopefully this is in your mind, but one of the concerns we've had in the past about frameworks is when they've been zero value frameworks, where there've been frameworks where you're awarded the possibility of tendering for something, and then you have mini competitions or whatever in order to actually secure the work. That's not a bankable proposition in terms of your business. Also, worse than that, you can end up actually literally being zero value. So, how would you be taking those things into consideration in your open framework approach? So there's some kind of minimum value that a bidder could expect to see.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I think in my piece I spoke about profitability of the sector and making sure suppliers are sustainable. So it's not sustainable for us to have suppliers within a framework that are not actually getting procurements. So what we're actually doing is, as part of framework review, we're looking at various things. Who are winning most of the contracts? Who are not winning any? What are the reasons for that? And we're making sure going forward that frameworks are vehicles, because if a supplier is on the framework, it means they're competent. And if they're competent, they should be getting the procurement. So a situation where a supplier is on a framework and they're not getting and they're not winning any bids, it's not sustainable and it's not one. Going forward, we encourage or will support. So we're looking regularly at the suppliers on the frameworks, and we've got the MI, so we can check what is happening, and we're looking to make sure all participants in the framework actually get value from it.
That's really good to hear, Jimmy. We look forward to ensuring that happens. I think we've run out of time really, but I just wonder if Cameron has any last remarks that you'd like to add to that. It's not a requirement, but I just wondered if you wanted to.
No, well, I think in all organisations you'll get. Unfortunately, procurement strategies that overlap and clash with each other. I'm hoping as part of the devolution strategy, putting passengers first, the procurement teams will be closer to the sources of procurement requirements, and therefore hopefully we will end up with a complementary set of frameworks that ensure that they are used appropriately, and we don't have dormant frameworks that suppliers have spent a lot of money tendering for and then aren't getting the throughput to deliver on that investment in a return. So I'm hoping, I'm not going to be churlish enough to say that in the past we haven't, but I would hope that going forward we will have a more focused and complementary procurement strategy that will allow us to where we are using frameworks, utilise them to the full extent intended.
Thank you. I think that's a positive point to end it on, and good to hear you recognising as a stating your recognition that bidding costs money, and to not do that in an efficient way is counterproductive for everybody. There's that. So thank you both of you, to Cameron and Jimmy, for a really insightful presentation and discussion. Really appreciate your involvement. The audience, I think, has got a good insight into what's being done now to make procurement more efficient and what the future might hold too. So if you can imagine that virtual round of applause, thank you very much, gentlemen.